Hello, everyone. I realize I may be one of two people standing between you and your lunch, so I will try to make this quick and hopefully leave some time for any questions or answers. Today I'm going to talk about designing human experience, and you may not be surprised to know that as a designer, as a practitioner of design, I'm a firm believer in the potential of design, and I'm a huge advocate for design. What you may be surprised to know is I'm also very optimistic about many of the problems that we talk about today, whether it's related to the environment, sustainability, or other impacts that we are having. And the reason I am is because designers are one of the few groups of people in culture who are trained to deal with change. And many of the changes that we've seen, many of the impacts that we see today as negative impacts, I think can be positively fixed by design and our approach to thinking about design. Our company is a collective of people who are united around the belief that design defines human progress. And I think historically, it is something that, again, makes me very much an advocate for design. And I think those of you in the audience who are in the design field will find that this is something that you can own, something that you can get a hold of and impact and make progress, whether it's in large or small ways. We've been very fortunate to work with incredible people who share this belief. And I think that over the years, this is our 30th year in business, we have had this chance to make impact in little ways or in big ways. So, designing human experience. Apple, as it was mentioned, is one of our clients. We're in our 22nd year with Apple this year. But in working with Steve Jobs when he was at the company, we had a chance to really understand the philosophy. And his core philosophy is really understanding that it's about what design does for people. It's not so much what it looks like and how it feels, but ultimately what is the impact that it has. If we talk about human aspect of this, typically in business we will look at users and consumers and tend to classify people in different ways. And I think we want to understand human behavior. I think it's very important for us to get back to understanding how we interrelate with one another and have that be the focus of the work. And the third part is experience. Why experience? It's not just the form of the object, as I mentioned. It's what people do with the interaction with whatever it is that you're designing. Marshall McLuhan talks about it's experience rather than understanding is what influences behavior. This is a key piece of this approach. If you do this properly, the human outcomes are the focus of your work. The business outcomes tend to follow. We've seen this consistently, that there's a value to focus on the human outcome. We see incredible economic lift, but we also see lift in any form of value creation. So what is experience? Experience, in our view, is ultimately it's an expression of a core set of values that a company has that people experience. We experience things holistically, even though our education system trains us to look at things within silos and verticals. And in this approach, understanding the way we interact becomes key to creating successful experiences for companies or for people. So I have 8 points to identify here with some case studies to help highlight some of the aspects of this approach. The first one, as I mentioned, is what it does for people. I don't think anybody's interested in incremental design. I think people care about what it does for you. When we launched the iPhone, initially the impact was incredibly staggering. And I think that the growth of this has been really a phenomenal thing. But the point is, really, what did it do for people? How many people recognize this product? Still some people? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so this is one of the early iPods. But nobody remembers how much memory it has. Nobody remembers what it does for people. But I think nobody remembers what the specs and the memory was. But what people do remember is what it does. Let me just run that again.
And this is what the front of it looks like. Boom. That's iPod. I happen to have one right here in my pocket, matter of fact. There it is, right there. So, this amazing little device holds 1,000 songs, and it goes right in my pocket.
The point is, 1,000 songs in your pocket is what people remember about iPod. When we think of technology today, it's not just a technical capability, it's what it does for people that makes it valuable. The second point is understanding the creation of adoption. Many people talk about innovation, they talk about ideas, but unless people adopt what you're doing, you don't truly have innovation. And one of the key things when you focus on the experience of the product is you have incredible business outcomes. The column on the far right-hand side, doing this successfully means you have a 6x opportunity for people to purchase or engage with your product. They're 12 times more likely to recommend you, to become an advocate for your business, and also 5 times more likely to forgive a mistake. So if you're not focusing on the experience that you're creating, you're leaving opportunity on the table. This is a project we did for Nissan in Ginza with Klein Dytham Architects, but this project was for Nissan Experience Center. They originally asked us to look at changing the number of visitors from 3,000 to 4,000 visitors. We changed the concept, which is to focus only on the future of mobility and to feature those elements. As a result, we ended up with 250,000 visitors a month. So again, adoption as a key. The third point is uncommon insight. We tend to look at common things and really work forward from understanding history. And that's fine, except it's only part of the equation. The other half of everything is the future. No one would have said that what we needed in the future was a decentralized network of information nodes that are linked using hypertext if you asked them in 1989. But that's the internet, and that's our world today. So how do you change or extract that insight becomes very important. For us, this is work that we've done with Virgin over the years, but looking at the Virgin experience as something that separates them from their competitors and uses insights that allows them to stand out from everyone else. The fourth point is having courage, being courageous. The research shows that 80% of CEOs believe they're creating a differentiated product. Unfortunately, only 8% of consumers believe it. So there's a big disconnect here. And the problem is most people create a differentiated product and then they end up delivering it in the same way as their peers. And by looking at your peers, you're limiting the perception of people to see you as something different than everyone else. Most people, when we launched the Apple Retail program, were very skeptical. The night before we opened the first store, Steve was sitting on one of the tables and he asked us, what happens if nobody comes tomorrow? And the reason was there was no real statistics that were there to show us that that was going to be a success. We had to put it out there and see if it was going to work. And many of the pundits, in this case Bloomberg, were looking at this program and saying, look, it hadn't been done before, therefore it's going to struggle to be successful. If Apple was looking at this from a risk standpoint, they might have not done the program. But the real risk would have been not doing the program. The real risk wouldn't have been spending a few $1 million to try to build some stores. The real risk would have been listening to the pundits saying it's never been done like this before, therefore don't do it. Bloomberg 10 years later wrote a much better article talking about us selling $36,000 a square foot out of the program. The fifth point is staying relevant and connected. And this is something from Scott Galloway at NYU, talks about the new algorithm of value. And what he notes here is that most successful companies today, and the ones in the upper right-hand corner, at least in the US stock markets, represent 51% of the NASDAQ stock value. They do so because of the number of receptors or touch points that they have in a market, as well as the intelligence that they gather from those interactions. We took this approach with Xiaomi, one of the larger electronics manufacturers in China, and we took an approach that's probably different than traditional retail. Most retail today, you will talk about omni-channel, which is you have bricks and mortar and you have e-commerce. But we took a new tack at this, which is defining mono-channel experience. A mono-channel experience recognizes we're all here in this room physically, but we're all here connected digitally at the same time. So it's no longer a separate slice of bread. What it is these two things are coming together simultaneously in terms of our behaviors, in terms of our interactions. And so this is one of the challenges, was to how to create a retail program that's activated through digital engagement. And so in the space, we were able to put both touch points where QR codes are read and brought into the mobile devices, but also a digital portal. And I'll show you how that works. That was the entire purchase journey. And so was this type of interaction a reflection of today's culture? We're learning that it's highly valuable, both from the user experience, but also from the company. We were able to 10x the sales and the product offers, but the receptors and intelligence that was gained from that is very important in terms of driving a new type of behavior. And we have over 80% adoption where people are interacting with the devices they're interested in and purchasing them in the store, so there are no cash wraps. The sixth point is irrational loyalty. And this has to do with an understanding that word of mouth, the majority of word of mouth, is generated by direct experience. So again, if you're not focusing on the experience, the additional word of mouth value that you're looking for may not be there. This is a vending machine we did in Japan. It picked up the basic criteria from the client to increase the sales by 3 times and deliver a new type of digital experience as vending machines. But we realized that these devices are located on the train platforms throughout Japan. And the lift here was really to move away from the transaction idea and start to build a deeper connection to the brand. We convinced them to put a battery pack in the bottom of the device, recognizing that in Japan, when there's an earthquake, the trains stop running and people get stranded on the platforms. And so in this case, when there's an earthquake, the power goes down, the machines wake up, a bubble floats up, and it says, if you need a drink, take one. We had 50 of these in the market when the Fukushima earthquake happened. Everybody was stranded and terrified, but all of these machines woke up from the battery pack and gave away the drinks that were in the machines. So the entire inventory of machines was taken by the stranded passengers. But the irrational loyalty that came from that one insight into how you can make a deeper connection with the customer now makes them the #1 provider of these drinks in the country. Another thing that consultants probably won't tell you is to beware of best practices. And a big part of this is the recognition of that issue of 80% of CEOs versus 8% of customers. This is for a company called Globe Telecom in the Philippines. They asked us to look at their telco stores and to think about engaging with them differently. And we looked at all of the other telcos and convinced them to change their point of view from thinking of themselves as a telco, essentially a utility company, to thinking of themselves as an entertainment company. And this is moving from pipes to emotion. The delivery here was to not sell the products in the same way that they've always been sold, but to start to move from the functional part to the emotional part. They were able to move from the number 3 telco in the country to the number 1 telco, now with 56% market share. And the last point is a focus of return on experience is actually better return on investment. So if you look at design as a critical tool to drive successful human engagement, that in turn drives successful business engagement. Lincoln came to us for China and they asked us to launch the Lincoln brand in China. We told them they have last mover advantage because all the other brands had already been there. Therefore, we couldn't sell and engage in the same way. Our recommendation was to eliminate salespeople. And the key here was to change the experience, to move from a transaction to building a strong relationship. And again, looking at differentiating them relative to all of their competitors. Ultimately, the program was launched. We broke the record for the most cars sold in the history of the company, moved them to the number 3 luxury brand in the nation, and now it's a part of their global program. I think the key takeaways here is that how you design something is what matters. That design has an incredible impact on your success, both in terms of value creation for people and ultimately value creation for business. And I firmly believe, both in the relationships with our clients who are focusing on what their products do for people, that creativity is probably one of the strongest tools that business has as a way to connect with people. And then for us, the secret of creating value ultimately comes down to, are you creating a better human outcome? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Could we have some questions from the audience?
Hi, I'm Afreen. And first of all, congratulations. And it was an excellent presentation. I think it was to the point rather than being so elaborate, having a discussion without any takeaways. It was very precise. And when you were saying that creativity or better design is through better human experience, what I noticed was you were all about making technology come near human and how you would enhance the human experience by these notions. Doesn't that limit us in any way? I'm definitely in for the technology, but then does it limit us to our experiences?
Does it limit us? Is that the question? Does it
Yeah,
limit us?
does it limit us? Because you're in India, it's rather a challenge to be in that side.
Well, I think it's important, particularly in technology, to recognize that the focus of the technology is not to take an incremental view of an increased technical capability, but understand when that capability can be used to create an outcome. And I think you can point to Apple and the success with the product development there, but I think you can go back in history. In most cases, when Hewlett-Packard was successful, they weren't just creating a technical capability, they were combining that capability with a human outcome. And I think when you're looking at value creation, incremental value puts you at great risk if you're doing this for a business purpose. But I think when you start to look at that human outcome, are you actually creating a benefit from a value system that the people you want to connect with share? Then I think you have something that's much more powerful and creates much greater value.
Do we have another question?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for such a crisp and a great presentation. I just have one question. In one of the pointers, you had mentioned about having courage to take these big decisions that you think is right for the brand. I just want to understand, where does that point of courage come from? Is it at the juncture, right? Is it from self-belief, or is it in the belief of the process that you're undertaken? Because me and my friend have started a company and it's just 2 years old. But it is at that point because there is money from the client involved. There are all these other decisions involved. So we're just trying to understand how do you take that risk and just trying to be like, I know this is going to be right and I know this is going to help your business.
Yeah, if I heard the question correctly, I think, everyone, particularly if you're starting a new business, the financial constraints are very real, whether you're a large or a small company, actually. And so recognizing the value of that experience that you're focusing on in terms of the impact it can have on the business success. In many cases in the airline industry, we hear this all the time, that a focus on experience is a frill, that it's beyond the function, therefore it's something that could be taken away. But the work with Virgin and with other clients, when you focus on that experience, it's hard to put a financial metric directly against that cost. But ultimately, that value that you're creating is much larger for the company. And we've seen this frequently. When people ask us to come and consult on their business, one of the first things we talk about is this notion of recognizing we're not looking to minimize your engagement. We're looking to maximize the potential.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim.